This episode is brought to you by Bumble. So, you want to find someone you're compatible with, specifically someone who's ready for a serious connection, totally open to having kids in the future, is a tall, rock-climbing Libra, and loves rom-coms with vegan pizzas on Tuesdays just as much as you do. Bumble knows that you know exactly what's right for you. So whatever it is you're looking for, Bumble's features can help you find it. Date now on Bumble.
When you know the psychology behind something, and when you can teach your kids to notice the psychology behind something, it starts losing its effect on you. It is not about limits so much as it's about educating people using these devices and what they're trying to do. Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. I'm your host, Joanne Crone, joined here by the delightful Bree Tucker.
Why, hello, everybody. How are you?
We're talking about screen time today, but it is not the typical conversation that you will hear on other parenting podcasts about screen time, because I kind of want to take it down. I want to take down the screen time argument. Just this morning, Brie, I was looking through Instagram and there was yet another person telling moms how they should run screen time in their house on Instagram. And this one was like, well, the expectations you set at the beginning for screen time are going to be the ones that the kids become accustomed to. So make sure you start, strongly.
What was her
And
advice?
It was just to like set a short amount of time as you want. And like, because it's harder to go back on it than it is to allow more wiggle room on it. But we're asking the wrong questions here.
Say, like, the advice isn't terrible. It's good advice, but the problem is, one, it's not long term. It's not thinking about the long game here. And two, wow, I would feel like just complete and utter poop every day that I would fail.
Exactly.
So, I mean,
Exactly.
and then also we're talking about for this episode. And Bree, the mom, would be the one that feels like poop.
Exactly. So in this episode, we're really talking about whose job is it for these stupid screen time rules? Because I'll give you one hint, they're making it mom's job, and we don't think it has to be that way. So look forward to this episode, and let's get on with the show.
You want mom life to be easier. That's our goal too. Our mission is to raise more self-sufficient and independent kids, and we're going to have fun doing it. We're going to help you delegate and step back. Each episode will tackle strategies for positive discipline, making our kids more responsible and making our lives better in the process. Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast.
Okay, Bree, so this screen time debate, like it's always kind of bothered me, like right underneath the surface of like all of these so-called experts giving moms advice about how much screen time is appropriate and what should kids do on screen time. We even see this in our balance group with questions that are asked, with all of this like brain power being devoted to what do you guys do for screen time and how much screen time do your kids have? I mean, you've seen it too.
Right. And the art and just to be clear, like our bone that we are picking on this episode is not that screen time should be limited. Yes, we do believe that there are limits to things. Like there are limits to everything in life. Everything should happen in moderation. But that it feels like this doom and gloom method of hell and fire and brimstone are going to fall upon you and your family if your child is on screens for too much during the day, that not only is everybody going to go to hell in a handbasket, but it's also all on you, mom. Because if you're not policing it, then you're not doing your job as a mom. And that's where we are like, no.
No, like there's so much I want to say of it, because when we talk about screen time limits, like everything you say should have its limit,
Yeah.
or be in moderation, including moderation.
Okay.
Let's
Let's hear more
use
about
moderation in moderation as well, because I just don't think that there is Like, even though for instance, our membership is called balance because there's this idea in the world that you need to balance your life. You need to have things in equal parts.
Mhm.
And that's really not it at all. It's about what works for you and what is the best for you and your family and your
It's
kids.
like, really?
It is not
Yeah, no, it is not what.
well, no, it is not about these like made up limits about what's good and what's bad because they're all made up. In fact, like throughout history, there has been this like push against every single media that has come out. I mean, in our No Guilt Mom Weekly, I recently wrote about reading and when books came out. And all of these people in like the 1700s were worried about the nation's children of this reading epidemic. Like, I'm not kidding. They thought it was a reading epidemic. And they thought that reading caused like seeking sensation more and like irregularity of emotions, like the same exact words we are using for screen time today. It's just history repeats itself.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, like, our balance group, instead of being called balance, should have been called What Brings You Peace, but that was too long to put on a sticker. And you know how much we love our stickers.
We'll lead
So,
operation. No,
it
no.
was like, hey. But I mean, you're right. Like, everything new that comes along, everybody freaks out about it. Like the same thing like
Mhm.
with radio when it first came out, and like, oh, do you remember when radio I well, not that we're old enough to remember this. Let me clarify that for our listeners. But like when radios first were added to cars, like they were like, no, this is terrible. Everybody's gonna be like having accidents. And again, we're not saying that limits aren't good. We're just saying that we personally feel like the message that is getting sent out en masse to moms is not as helpful as it seems. And that there is a different
Yeah.
perspective you can take that will be better for your mental health, your well being, and in the long run, more than likely, be better for your kids as well. So, yeah, like
Yeah.
my first bone to pick
Exactly.
on this is, why is it always being told to moms? I have never,
I know.
never once in all my years of doing home visitation and newborn follow-up, parent education programs I worked in, as well as like all of the social media that I see, I have never once seen an information being sent out to dads that you need to
Right.
monitor your kids' screen time. Never once.
Yeah, no, I've never seen it either. The message is not there for
Down with the
dads,
patriarchy on
and,
this.
like, it is totally down with you know my bone with the
Yes.
patriarchy. I like to pick that fight every single day of my life. Like, the whole, like, for screen time, like, why is it mom's responsibility? Because this is a question we're not
Yeah.
asking. Like, instead of how much screen time should your kids have, what screen time apps are you using? The question should be, why are we in
Yeah,
charge of
why is it
this?
all my
Why
job?
are we as moms in charge of
Why is it
this?
always my fault when the kids are on for too long? Like, I was doing 16 other things, for God's sake.
Exactly. And that is what is being pushed on us to think about because screen
Mhm.
time, like, there is nothing wrong with screen time. And people will come back with me and say, Joanne, oh my gosh, all of these apps and they have these things built in where you just don't want to put it down. And the TikTok
Oh,
algorithm, Joanne, the TikTok regular algorithm is so obsessive. Like, you'll be on there for hours and you don't even know. And that's going to harm
and
kids'
what was it?
brains.
We had a guest that did, I
Yes.
think it was, Devorah Heitner, or somebody was talking about, like, these apps that, like, make the characters go cry when you log off.
Oh, yes. I
I
remember.
was
Yeah.
like, "What? That is so mean." Like,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's true. They are using these things that are specifically aligned with human psychology to get people to stay on their devices longer. However, these techniques are not
Yeah.
new, and they are not specifically used by the tech companies. So it's not like it is an evil, evil thing. There's a book, it's by Robert Cialdini that a lot of online marketers read. It's called Influence. And it's so funny because originally Robert Cialdini is actually a professor at ASU, but he has nationwide appeal. And he wanted to make consumers aware of all of these psychological tactics that like sale companies use to sell their products to make you want their products. The things like
Mhm.
scarcity, like only providing a limited amount makes people
Oh, that gets
go
me every
and
time.
buy.
Every damn time. If I don't
Well,
get it
yeah.
now, it'll be gone.
Oh, And, like, it was used during, like, the Christmas season when we were growing up, like, Furbies. "Oh my gosh, you have to go get a Furby, there's none left." Like,
Ugh.
you had those tactics being used on you, and what's really funny about this book is that he published it for that intention to tell consumers. Well, guess what happened? All of the marketers picked it up and read the book and started using all of the tactics
He's
in their
like, "Well, wait,
marketing.
that wasn't my intent." Oh.
Yeah, so it was used for, like, to sell more stuff because that I mean, that's what it is, it's human psychology. So, it's not so much about limiting screen time because this human psychology is at work
Mhm.
everywhere, but I will tell you what you can do for it right after this break. I've been looking for simple ways to form healthy habits and get the nutrients my body needs, even on busy mornings. And oh my gosh, has it been busy lately? And that's why I decided to give AG1 a try. Not only does AG1 deliver my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre and probiotics, and more, but it's a powerful, healthy habit that's also powerfully simple. It's just one scoop mixed in water once a day every day, and it makes me feel energized. Even like I still add the coffee on there because I like it a lot. AG1 tastes really good too, and I enjoy my glass every single morning. AG1 is a supplement I trust to provide the support my body needs daily, and that's why I'm excited to welcome them as a new partner. If you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1 year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/NGM. That's drinkag1.com/NGM. Check it out.
If you're a parent, I invite you to join us at the Mindful Mama podcast, where it's all about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. With sometimes hilarious and always thought-provoking experts and friends, at Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have. And when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm Hunter Clark Fields, and I can't wait to see you there. Listen in to the Mindful Mama podcast.
Okay, so right before the break, it's funny. Every time I go into an ad break, Breeze always is like congratulates me on how seamless I made this transition into an ad break.
It's a lot. We have
But
a
I
lot
want to.
going on. Like, we're literally talking about the episode at we have a short outline for these people, but for the most part, this is you're legitimately like, imagine we have a cup of coffee or our favorite drink and we are just sitting and talking because that's how we do these episodes. So again, I think that's amazing how you
Oh
managed to
yeah.
seamlessly do that.
Well, thank you, but I want to bring it up to
Okay.
what we were actually talking about. We were talking about that book Influence and about all these psychological tactics. And of course, I've read it. I'm a
Yeah.
marketer. I know what these tactics are, and I just used one to get you to keep listening through the wonderful sponsors who we think have great things for you. I used a cliffhanger. I didn't tell you like all the information you wanted to know. I put it after the break. That is a psychological tactic. That is one of those psychological tactics that's like tech companies are using to keep people on screens and their devices longer. So, knowing when those happen is the secret. Like when you know the psychology behind something, and when you can teach your kids to notice the psychology
Mhm.
behind something, it starts losing its effect on you. And this is something else that is out of the screen time discussion. It is not about limits so much as it is about educating people using these devices and what they're trying to do. Like one of our favorite guests is Devorah
Mhm.
Heitner, who wrote Screenwise, who really promotes this idea of you don't want to be the police of your kids. Like you don't want to have to be policing all their screen time. Instead, you want to be walking alongside them and educating them so that they could eventually make the choices
Well, right,
themselves.
because
Uh,
yeah, like, so, like, we are I say this all the time to people, especially in balance, like, everybody needs the ghost of child future. Like, the friend that has a kid that's a little bit older, and I know that we don't have older kids than everybody who's listening, but, I've got a kiddo that's turning 17 in a week and a half, and I've got an almost 16-year-old. We can tell you that I was flabbergasted, and you and I both have worked in the school system. I was, like, an admin, not in the classroom, but I was flabbergasted when my kids got into junior high and high school about how much tech they needed to use on a daily basis for school. Just
Mhm.
insane to me. So, again, like, what I'm trying to tell you is that, yes, you again, like, there's a good point for limits when they're younger, but they are going to have to use screens and tech for the rest of their lives, in their work, but even in their school. In school, while they are still at home living with you, and that is why it's important, because they do need to learn this stuff. We can't we
Well,
can't
yeah,
be their gatekeepers
they
forever. It's impossible.
yeah, well, they do need to learn it, and they are gonna eventually go out on their own, and there is this huge conversation right now about screen time and mental health.
Mhm.
And the issue is, like, when you spend all of your time on screens, you are missing out on real social connection. You're missing out also on activity and exercise and things that would make you feel good if you realize it, if you got off your
Yeah.
screen. And those things are all true. Now, what I see happening on social media in particular is that they say that the solution to this problem is, Mom, you got to limit the screen time. You should only let your kids have so much a day. I make my kids have green time in addition to screen time. Have you
I
seen this?
haven't
Have you
seen
seen-
Green Time. Is Green Time outside? Like, I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah, it's outside. Green time's outside. But, like, all of this stuff that, like, I see it, I'm like, guys, we're missing the point here because you cannot tell a teenager, you cannot just simply take away their device. I really want to see how this works out. And this is probably how it is working out in many, many homes where they're like, all the popular advice, well, you're the parent. You should just
And
take
you
it away.
can.
I'm
We're not
sorry. Do you
saying you
know
can't,
you
but it
can't?
might not have the results you
You
would like.
can't.
It
Yeah.
more than
It's
likely
one of
won't.
those things where that is where you're gonna see the pushback with your kids. That is where you're gonna see the rebellion of your kids. Like, if you think teenage rebellion, there is nothing that will incite more teenage rebellion than them to think that something has been unfairly taken away from them. And I wanna argue that if you just have your kids on screens and then you take something away, that was unfair to them, and that was disrespectful to them, and I will stand on that. Like, you can come at me with that one, I will stand on that because at that point in their lives, kids are making their own decisions and they're becoming autonomous. And they like the more respect you show them, the more respect they show us. Now,
I
there's a lot of teaching that goes
Yeah,
behind that.
and
There's a lot of
there
discussions
is.
that goes
There
behind that.
is, and I would say, like, we recently had our Happy Mom Summit. Ned Johnson was one of our speakers again. Ned Johnson's been on the podcast
Mhm.
a few times. He is amazing, and he is an expert in teen motivation. And one of the things that he said in one of our podcast interviews that really has always stuck with me is that, your kids are home or, like, live with you theoretically for 18 years, and that during those 18 years, you are establishing a relationship with them that's going to hopefully make them still want to interact with you after those 18 years when they leave. And you and I both
Mhm.
take the mindset that, like, just saying "my house, my rules" is a very quick way to make your child feel like they have no voice, they have no say,
Mhm.
and that there is that respect only goes one way. And that's not
Exactly.
how relationships are.
It's not how relationships are, and it doesn't give kids any tools to use for the future because once they move out of your house, who's going to take away their
Oh,
screen
I
time
know,
now?
right? Who's gonna be the one like,
No
"Woo,
one.
party time! I get to do whatever all the
Yeah,
time because I never learned how to handle limits on my own. I just had everybody else doing them for me." Sorry. They won't sing it that way,
exactly.
like, they won't
No,
jump
I mean,
into, like, a dance number, but it could happen.
that's kind of how it is, though. So instead of like enforcing limits, which I think is incredibly hard and makes you feel like a failure every day because they are impossible to enforce every day with everything else you have on your
Mhm.
mind. Like, this isn't saying like you're a bad parent if you don't enforce limits. This is saying that, oh my gosh, it's impossible for you to enforce these limits because you are a busy person
Yeah.
yourself. And like, can I just say, like, part of my rage, how dare people go out there and tell parents that they should do their job and enforce their limits? Like, what, like, gall do they have to say that?
To
Uh,
feel like they're
I
not
just get
doing
very
their best and
uppity.
that parent I mean, yeah, to sit there and judge right out the bat. that you're not doing a good job and that you're not
Yeah.
caring if you're not doing this. And that's where we're like, BS to that. That's not, no.
Or that you need to step up and be the adult. Brie, I can't. Like, hold me back, Brie. Hold
Okay,
me
there
back.
is
Like,
something to be said about the importance of being there and being supportive to your kids is not the same thing as them liking you and all the time and wanting to
no.
please everybody. That's a whole different problem we're talking that could be there. And I just want to be clear because I feel like sometimes the first argument I hear back from certain people that have the mindset that, be the adult, you're the one in charge. They seem to think that if you do anything that could possibly be to the benefit of the child, that you're being a pushover and you just want them to like you. And you're like,
Yeah.
"No, no, that's not
No.
no,
No, that's not it.
no." So
No. We're just using human psychology and how people work to be able to get exactly what we want. Like, and what we want isn't nefarious. What we want is we want our kids to be mentally
yeah,
healthy. We want them to be mentally strong. We want to have a really good relationship with them, and we want to make sure they're kind, good people. Like, that's what we
yeah,
want. And so if you're putting on limits and these boundaries, you're not getting what you want. You're actually getting a lot of rebellion and pushback. So the question becomes around screen time, how do we get what we want? And we're going to have that message for you right after this break.
I'm Margaret.
And I'm Amy.
And together we host the podcast, What Fresh Hell? Laughing in the Face of Motherhood.
Margaret, I would say you're sort of a where are my keys kind of mom.
Correct. Sometimes a where are my kids kind of mom. Well, you're Amy more of a we were supposed to leave 35 seconds ago, mom.
I mean, touche. In each episode of What Fresh Hell, we come at a topic from our usually completely opposite perspectives. I bring the research.
And I bring kind of the gimlet eye. Like, is that research really going to work, people?
And almost 10 million downloads later, we're still laughing.
We also talk to experts in the parenting field, plus parents with stories we can all learn from.
We make each other laugh, we challenge each other's assumptions, and we have what we think is the best parenting community on the internet.
Check out What Fresh Hell? Laughing in the Face of Motherhood wherever you listen to podcasts.
Well, hey there, busy mama. Are you looking for ways to make your life easier, your home less chaotic, and at the same time add more joy to your life? My name is Deanna Yates, and I'm the host of Wanna Be Clutter Free, a podcast all about letting go of the stuff we don't need in our lives so that we can focus on what truly matters. Don't worry, I'm not going to tell you to throw it all away or make you feel guilty about keeping something you love, no matter how many other people don't quite understand it. But I will give you practical and, more importantly, actionable advice so that you can make progress right away. And you won't just hear it from me. There are amazing guests too. It's like having your bestie in your pocket telling you it's okay to let go of the things that are not serving you and your family in a totally non-judgmental way. So join me over on the podcast where we can work on progress over perfection for those of us that want to be clutter-free.
So, what do we want as parents? We want that good relationship. We want them to have like mental
Mhm.
strength. We want them to take care of their own responsibilities because we don't want them to be on screens all
Yeah.
the time. So, the way I've gone about this, and I want to hear the way that you've gone about it too, Brie, is that I started having a lot of discussions with my kids. We talked first of all about how screens make us feel. And it usually happens, like, if I've seen them be on screens for a while. This is how I started out, and I'm like, "Hey, like, how's it going? Like, how's your mind going?" Because, like, they also had limits on theirs, but ours limit wasn't a strong and fast limit. It was "Okay, you have an hour screen time, and then you need to come check in with me." So I did have a
Mhm.
system that was automated, that was driven by them and
Yeah, they
not
had to
me.
actually get up and come talk to you. And they wanted more.
Exactly. I didn't have to check in
Yeah.
with them. They had to come to me if they wanted more
Yeah.
screen time. And so they would come to me, and that's when we would have these discussions, be like, "Okay, so how are you doing? How are you
Mhm.
feeling?" And they would tell me, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm doing good. Like I'm playing with my friend on Minecraft." And I'd be like, "Cool." They're like, "Can I have another hour?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. That's fine. Like you're talking, conversing. It's totally cool." And then other times, like, they would come to me and maybe one of them would stomp in the room, and I'd be like, "So, And also, like, during these times is when I check in on, like, their other responsibilities. I'm like, "So how does the kitchen look right now?" To which I would get the and, like, the scream at me and then go stomp out of the room, and then I hear, like, the dishes going on, like, I mean, they're not happy about this
Yeah,
at
they're not in a
all,
good
but it's
place
also,
at the
like,
moment, and that's obvious.
no, but they also knew that this was, like, first of all, the dishes were their
Mhm.
responsibility, and, like, this screen time check, like, I wasn't doing any moral put down for them, they just had not done their
Yeah.
job yet. So, like, it was a very simple thing. So, that's how we first started talking about it, and then other conversations would come up just in the car, and I would say about my own screen time, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I've been on my computer all day, and I really need some time outside because I'm feeling really like, depressed and sad." And just bringing it up that way and modeling through me so that over the years, as we've done this, my kids are like, I'm going to go out biking. Like my son in particular, I'm going to go out biking. I can't be on screens anymore. And he'll like text his neighborhood friend and they'll go out biking now. Um, but they're realizing now to monitor their own mental health, to be like, hey, I've been here a long time. I need to get off versus me enforcing the
Mhm.
limit. Now, there are times where I will see mental health deteriorating, and that is when I'll step in and have the conversation with them, being like, I notice these things right now. And I don't think that being on your screen right now is really serving you or helping you. And they'll be like, no, I'm fine. I'm like, let's take a break and let's go outside. And like, I will be like, okay, you're not fine. Let's go and talk
Yeah.
about this. And it would be slam the computer, stomp up the stairs, slam the bedroom door, and then, like, in an hour, "I'm sorry." So, it's not a like, when you say that is to make our kids like us, I've
Right.
done nothing. My kids
That
like
is
me.
my point, is that, like, when you say it in the way of, like, "Oh, let's check in, let's do," it I think a lot of people imagine that it gets to the point where you were articulating that it is now after years of talking and working with them, where they're like, "You're right, mom. I think I'm done with my screen time right now." Okay, first of all, you don't get that all the time. Like, how many times, even as an
No, you don't.
adult, how many times have you had that conversation with somebody else where they wanted something that you had control of? Let's even just take your
Mhm,
spouse, right? The person who you're supposed to like be able to get along with and communicate with the best. There's something from you that they want, that you have control of, and you tell them no, they're not going to get it. How often are they like, "Oh, I totally understand. That's great. Yeah, totally. No problem. No problem. Yeah, I hear you."
mhm,
No, a lot of times there is pushback, but give people time to breathe and they will work through it. And like the amount of skills that you're teaching your children in those scenarios that you were talking about checking in on your mental
mhm,
health, displaying like what reasonable limits could be, giving other solutions, giving them space, allowing them to be angry and work through it in a
mhm,
helpful way, instead of like continuing to have them scream back at you when you're like, you could sit there and keep yelling at them, how dare you stomp at me, do you know how expensive that computer is, you do not slam it, this is my house, these are my doors, you don't slam them. I do admit, like, that's the one
yeah.
thing that gets me in my house. I do not like doors being slammed, but I've told my kids a million times it's because I don't want you to crack. Don't crack my walls from slamming doors.
Yeah, well, now they have jobs,
Ah,
Bree, so they could you'd be like, "I need some
yeah,
salary."
now it's gonna be like, okay, now there's some money here too. But I mean, like, so there's a lot
Yeah.
of things that you're teaching them that I think is immensely helpful, way more helpful than just the arbitrary, you get 1 hour of screen time and that's it. And there's other pieces of the advice that is out there that you and I both utilize in our homes. Like, I have a rule of, like, no phones out at dinner. We don't have our If you're
Yeah.
expecting something that's important, you can have your phone face down on the table. Like, if there's something timely that's coming through, I'll allow for that, but you don't get to be on it. Like, we don't do that.
Yeah, but and there's a specific reason for
Right.
that. There's a, "Hey, we wanna talk with each other at the dinner table, so you need to put your devices down." And like that's more of a norm. That's like a family norm. That's something we're all together. It's not this outside thing that you have to police while you're doing a billion other different things at the time. Like you're focused on your people at the dinner
Yeah.
table. So that's a
Yeah.
norm. But this idea of like trying to figure out how many hours a day your kids spend on screens, especially when they're off on school break while you're trying to get your own work done, is just ridiculous. And I want to banish it from all like mom's thoughts and vocabularies and
Well,
whatever. Like screen time limits, I just want to be like, "Pfft,
Well, I think that also, like, when it comes into them needing to be on their screens for schoolwork, researching
mhm,
a paper that they have to write or whatever. And that even starts in elementary school with topics that they're doing a project on. They need to get information. And as much as I would love to have my kids still go to the library like I did back in the day and check out like open up an encyclopedia and read up on something, that's just not how it's done. And
you did that?
oh yeah. Yeah.
I did not do
I
that."
mean, I'm not
Like
that much older than you, but I am also from, the Midwest. So yeah, like,
well, what did you read up
well,
on?
like whatever I had to do a report on. Like, oh man, now I'm like trying to think. Like, I just remember
Oh, well, that's
it
school
was
stuff.
yeah,
That's
that's what I
school
said.
stuff. I did have
Yeah,
to
that's
do
what I said.
that.
For school projects
Okay.
and things like that, you have to go and
Got
do
it.
that.
I thought you did
Oh
it for
God,
fun.
no.
I was like, "What?"
No.
Oh, that was my thing. I was like, "What? What did you do?"
No. I still remember it was the
This does not align with your
Mid-Continent
personality.
Library in Gladstone,
Oh.
Missouri. Shout out to my
Uh,
North Kansas City people. Yeah, no, that was for like reports and stuff. But I mean, like my point is, our kids have to get on screens for stuff like that. And yes, there are systems you can use that can like block out certain websites and time frame all of that. But if you're not,
and that's
yeah,
all great. Like block out those websites. I don't wanna
but
see them either.
if you're not able to do that for whatever the reason, I don't think it's fair still for mom to take on the entire mental load of trying to narrate who was on what website for how long and how much time they got for XYZ and all of these things. Like it's a lot. So like one of the big things that I would tell you is that you need to talk to your partner about this and have a tap in tap out system. Like where it's like it just it's not all on me, okay? It's not all on me. If
Mhm,
you see that the kids are on their phones when they're not supposed to be, or if you feel like they're getting, snippy, I prefer to use the word pissy, but that's not everybody's favorite vocab word. So if you see the kids are getting snippy and stomping or not getting their stuff done around the house, you can say something too. It's not all on me. Like, and I think sometimes we have to say
well,
that, right?
yeah.
Like, because I think sometimes people assume that we have everything covered as the she-fault parent. And it's like, dude, I don't want to be. I can't be.
No, and also, like, talking to your husband or partner about what they feel about screen time, because I know, like, my husband spends a lot of time on his
Mhm.
screens, and it's how he decompresses. Like, he is very, overly stimulated by his work environment and comes home and needs to put in headphones just because he cannot physically relax. So screens have uses that allow you to decompress and take that load off. And I've had talks with my daughter in the car because there's one situation where I picked her up from school and she was immediately like on her screen and just ignoring me in the car. And I told her like how it felt. I was like, "Yeah, I just feel ignored." And she told me very like to my face, she's like, I feel like it's better if I'm on my screen, else I'm gonna say something to you that I will regret because I'm in a very bad mood right now. I'm like, "Okay, I can
Yeah.
accept that.
Thank you
Yeah."
for communicating that. But you see how, like, and again,
Yeah.
that was a check in. That was like because of the fact you guys have
Mhm.
talked about your feelings and that you can express that without getting a how dare you talk to me in that tone? How dare you say that to me? You should be happy to see me. I'm your parent. Like, come on.
Oh,
Like we're
yeah.
all
Mhm.
allowed to have these feelings. So like so tapping in, tapping out, like you said, talking to your partner, talking to your kids about their mental health, checking in with them. I think another thing too is like narrating that screen time sometimes. Like I have to narrate it sometimes to my kids cuz when they were in like early elementary, all of elementary, I would say, even through like the beginning of middle school, they would be like, "Well, you're on your phone all the time." And so I would have to be like,
Mhm.
"Okay, true point. Would you like to see the article that I'm reading right now about the about the recent tax rates that got voted in our city. Would you like to read that article with me? Like, that is what I'm doing. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not playing Candy Crush. Like, there are other things that we can use our phones for.
Not that there's anything wrong with it being on Instagram or being on Candy
True.
Crush. Like, there's nothing wrong with
True.
that.
But having that conversation,
there's-
again, it's a dialogue.
it is a dialogue. It's a dialogue, and it's one of those things like kids will see what you do, and so narrating is a great tactic because then you could also be like, "Hey, I feel really crummy right
Exactly.
now. I need to put this down." I also tell my kids, I'll be like, "Look at what they're telling me to do for you on Instagram." Like I do come to my kids and be like, "Okay, so here's what I'm seeing about screen time limits and how they corrupt kids' brains on Instagram and what moms should do. What do you think about this?" Like, and it's so interesting because when I get my kids' viewpoints on it, they tell me, they're like, "Well, yeah, mom, I see that all the time from people, but here's why I think that like that's wrong." And they'll explain to me, and I agree with
Yeah.
them because it's not screen time in particular. There shouldn't be like these blank screen time limits. It is just humans and human nature and psychology. And if we try to make it too black and white, we get the whole situation wrong. So, to end this episode, I hope that you consider backing away from any set screen time limits and going more into discussion with your kids. We help you do stuff like this, give you the support for it in our balance program. So if you're wondering, where do I go next? Like, we have the program for you where we can help you start rethinking parenting so that you have more of these conversations and less of these like head butting arguments with your children. So check that out. We're going to have a link for you in the show notes. And until next time, remember, the best mom's a happy mom. Take care of you. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for stopping by.
Hey there, I'm Debbie Reber, the founder of Tilt Parenting and the author of the book Differently Wired. The mission of Tilt is to change the way neurodivergence, whether that's having a learning disability, having ADHD, being gifted, autistic, or some combination of all of the above, is perceived and experienced so differently wired kids and the parents like us raising them can truly thrive. On the Tilt Parenting podcast, I get to talk with authors, therapists, educators, and parenting experts who are committed to this mission. I ask the questions my listeners are most curious about when it comes to supporting our kids. And in turn, my guests share strategies for challenges, out-of-the-box ideas for navigating school, best practices for therapies, tips for advocating, and so many thoughtful insights on what it really takes to help our kids grow up feeling seen and respected so they can create awesome lives for themselves. I know that raising a differently wired kid can feel overwhelming and isolating, but I promise you, you are not alone, and it can feel so much better. If you're on this parenting journey, come listen to Tilt Parenting. Together, we can shift this paradigm and show up for our exceptional kids with hope, possibility, and joy.